or if you'd like to actually just adopt it under the bill, we will do the exact thing on the bill.
Okay, question's been called to an amendment. Do we have any objection? Any objections? Question been called on the amendment. Being none, all ready to vote to adopt House Amendment 19213 to House Bill 8005. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Ayes have it. The amendment's adopted. Now we're back on the bill as amended. You're recognized, Leader Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to my colleague, thank you for allowing us to get this at the posture that it is in, so that you have the bill as we'd like it to be considered by this committee. Leader Gant is going to go through a recitation of changes, as you had asked, and I believe Representative Hurt is going to see some details, and then I may actually make a couple of quick points, and then we stand ready for any questions or suggestions or debate that you may have on this bill. Thank you, members, for your consideration of this important bill.
Very good. Leader Gant, Citizen Majority Leader Gant, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Leader Lamberth, and I have Representative Hurt with me here as well. But let me first start out by saying we all respect the rights of Tennesseans to peacefully assemble. If you are a peaceful protester, this legislation does not pertain to you. Let me also be clear that in no way does this legislation restrict anyone's constitutional right to protest or exercise their First Amendment rights. However, if you escalate peaceful protest into acts of aggression and intimidation or seek violence toward law enforcement, firefighters, and our first responders, you will be held accountable. House Bill 8005 includes enhancements for anyone who assaults police officers, firefighters, and other first responders. At this time, I want to turn that over to our Representative Hurt, and he's going to go through all of those different instances where it increases the penalty.
Thank you, Leader. I want to start by defining and making clear who we're talking about when we talk about first responders. They are firefighters, emergency services personnel, post-certified law enforcement officer, or other person who responds to calls for emergency assistance from a 911 call. Includes Capitol Police officers, Tennessee Highway Patrol officers, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation agents, Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency officers, and park rangers employed by the Division of Parks and Recreation in the Department of Environment and Conservation. House Bill 805 creates a Class A misdemeanor offense of assault against a first responder, including law enforcement, firefighters, emergency service personnel, and others who respond to 911 calls. This will carry a mandatory minimum sentence of 30 days and a maximum $5,000 fine. It creates a Class C felony offense for aggravated assault against a first responder or the others we mentioned earlier. This will carry a mandatory minimum sentence of 90 days and a maximum $15,000 fine. The bill also clarifies existing laws already on the book related to camping on state property and addresses the defacement of state and public buildings, as well as acts of escalation and rioting enhancements for some. These include a 30-day mandatory minimum for participation in a riot and an order of restitution for any property damage or loss incurred as a result of the offense. A 45-day mandatory minimum sentence for aggravated rioting and an order of restitution for property damage. An order of restitution for injury, property damage, or loss for any incident involving vandalism or defacing state or public buildings. Lear?
Thank you, Representative. Mr. Chairman, if I may continue.
You may.
This legislation is necessary because we have seen recent instances of both across our state as well as across this nation, where rogue individuals have escalated civil demonstrations into acts of disorderly behavior and total lawlessness. These include the situation in late May when Nashville's historic courthouse was set on fire. Windows were smashed out and the building was littered with graffiti. That same evening, a statue on state property was pulled down and a historic marker was also defaced with paint. On July 5th, members of the Jackson Fire Department were targeted by a group that intentionally set a fire in a dumpster. The firefighters responded. The group shot fireworks at them, resulting in one squad member sustaining serious injuries. Earlier this year, we referred to our first responders as heroes. This is an opportunity to join together to support all who protect and serve us, who risk their lives for the citizens of Tennessee and our nation. And I would encourage each of you to let's make this a bipartisan approach to this matter instead of a partisan issue. Leader Lambert.
Yeah, the posture and the procedure, as I understand it, and as I want this committee run, is that I'm going to give the members the opportunity to explain this entire piece of legislation. I have a list of at least 5 members long right now. So if you all will just get my attention, let me know. I'll put you on a list. We're going to give people plenty of time. Every member here, plenty of time to ask any questions that they have, make any statements they need to make, and we'll go from there. So, Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I know we're all eager to get into the debate on this. I promise we'll try to wrap this up in a moment, but there was a question asked earlier, and I, again, appreciate the committee allowing us to put the amendment on so we could do this. We wanted to try to highlight any changes and the different components of this before we even began debate. One of the issues that, we took off notice 2004 a while ago, one of the issues that come up is that there were some questions, quite frankly, as to whether or not some of the laws that were already on the books were being implemented in a way that would continue to keep both peaceful protesters safe, visitors to the Capitol safe, all of us safe, any staff down here safe, to just examine that and see if there were potentially some other avenues that we go to ensure that the laws that we all pass are being implemented properly. Now, I will tell you, I personally spoke to the District Attorney General here in Nashville, as well as several others, and they have every intention of enforcing the laws that this body decides are the policy for this state. They've assured us of that. And in working with them, one of the changes that was from the original version of this that was originally filed was that instead of granting the Attorney General's office concurrent jurisdiction, which has been done in several other areas, this would allow for the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation to investigate certain criminal offenses, and if they feel that there's a crime that has been occurred there, they can go to a grand jury just like any other citizen could. If that grand jury returns, then that indictment would then be returned to that district attorney's office. If the district attorney refuses to do the will of the people, which is what the grand jury reflects, then the TBI could then petition the court to have a district attorney pro tem appointed. So in other words, have another district attorney, another elected district attorney or assistant district attorney to take a look at that case and say the grand jury has returned an indictment here. So it's gone through the process and everything. Can you take a look at this and see if you will prosecute this? And that gets 2 bites of the apple for the people of Tennessee to have the laws that we pass actually implemented. And it goes into that. One of the other things that was brought up to us is that currently obstructing traffic is an offense. It's a very low-level misdemeanor. Representative Griffey, who was here just a moment ago and is right here, brought up as part of the conversation over the last few days that, look, if you're an emergency services vehicle and you're trying to get through a road that's been blocked by someone, that's not a misdemeanor type offense. That's a felony level offense. And at Representative Griffey's urging and his suggestion, we've added into this, making that a felony. And quite frankly, making it a felony to block an emergency exit. If you have a fire in a building, if you have someone who's having a medical emergency and you have an emergency exit is blocked, that's a serious crime because quite frankly, it could result in someone's death. So if you have an ambulance that's going down the road and no matter what type of protest is going on, if that protest or that group of individuals has blocked traffic, when an ambulance or a fire truck or a police officer comes through with their lights and sirens, for goodness sakes, clear the road. That's somebody that needs medical attention or they're headed to somebody that needs medical attention. So Representative Griffey, thank you for that addition. I thought that was quite an improvement upon this bill. There's lots of other things that we could discuss and that we are absolutely stand ready to discuss. But Mr. Chairman, that's the beginning of the presentation of what this bill does. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee, for your patience.
Well, I appreciate the 3 of y'all being prepared and presenting this piece of legislation to this committee. And with that said, members, I'm going to open this up for questions. First on my list, I have Representative Savicki. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Leader Lambert, I want to say thank you for Section 5, Paragraph 3 about addressing the protesters who are making threatening statements to our law enforcement, taking pictures of them, putting their information on the internet, and urging people to go to their residence and maybe harass their family. First of all, hopefully that will never happen here in Tennessee, and I'm glad that's in the bill. Second of all, dangerous situation we had in front of Cordell Hall yesterday, not only to the legislators, but to traffic in general and to our assistants who come out there, who come here to work for the people of Tennessee and putting them in danger. Very happy to see that in there, and I appreciate it, sir. And I'm looking forward to voting for this legislation. Thank you.
Very good. Leader, you have any response?
No, just thank you, Representative Savicki, for those strong words of support. We appreciate your support on this bill. Thank you, sir.
Very good. Next on the list, I have Representative Hodges. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just a few questions. So the mandatory minimum, I mean, do we feel like we're taking discretion? I always hate mandatory minimums because I feel like we're taking discretion away from the judge. In really every case is different, right? I mean, we know that with any violation in the law. So are we not at all concerned about treating cases, letting judges kind of hear the case and juries hear the case and make decisions from there?
Leader, very nice.
So this body sets policy, this body sets law, this body sets penalties that the judicial system works within. And every single time that we set a penalty, the term of probation, whether it's a misdemeanor or felony, how much jail time is potentially included, we are in essence setting a mandatory minimum. We're also many times setting a mandatory maximum. That's what this bill does. It reflects, hopefully, a bipartisan will of this body that if you assault a police officer, if you spit in their face, especially during these times of pandemic, then that's a misdemeanor. If convicted, you'll serve 30 days in jail. Now, I, sir, stand for that. You will have to make a decision in a few moments as to whether or not you stand with our officers or you stand with those that are spitting in their face.
Representative Hodges, recognize.
Thank you. And then with enhancing the penalty for offenses of disrupting a meeting or procession and certain obstructing highway or other passageway offenses, what is that kind of broad? I mean, what is disrupting a meeting? Is if 50,000 people show up to Veterans Plaza and they're all chanting and we hear them in the General Assembly, would that be considered disrupting a meeting?
No, sir, it would
Leader
not.
Lambert, you recognize.
Oh, excuse me. No, sir, it would not.
Can you define what would be?
I believe it is defined in the Tennessee Code annotated. Leader, do you have that with you, or you'd like me to have legal?
It's defined in the Tennessee Code annotated. Yes, sir.
Okay, Representative Hodges, you recognize.
So the last thing I'll just say is, we seem to not worry about protesting when we as white people show up to our capitol with AR-15s. But when black people show up with signs, it just seems like all of a sudden we want to pass legislation to stop protesting. And so that's just a little concerning to me. And maybe that's why the protesters are out there in the first place. Just something to consider. Thank you.
Leader Lambert, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can always tell when it's election. Some of my colleagues make ridiculous comments that are meant for their constituents back home or some sort of video. That's not what this bill is, sir. You're an intelligent member of this body. You know it's not what this bill is. But I appreciate you putting it out there because Lady Justice is blind for a reason. I've spent my entire adult life trying to make sure that we have good policies on the books, and in a previous career, making sure that they were implemented. And never once did I ever consider the color of someone's skin, their ethnicity, their sex, their religion, their socioeconomic background or status at that time, their mental health status, or any other aspect of them other than what's contained in here. Any allegation to the contrary is literally ridiculous, sir.
Representative Hodges.
So we're talking about law and order and how important it is, yet the city of Nashville has a law to wear masks, and nobody in this body chooses to wear one when they leave this building, do they? So
let's stay on topic.
Do we care about certain laws, or do we care about all laws?
Leader Lambert, you can respond. That'll be your last question.
Mr. Chairman, I think if you check the ordinance out, there's an exception for state property that is actually not to be enforced in this building. I have encouraged previously, and the three of us here are obviously choosing not to wear a mask in order to be heard, in order for you to be able to hear our responses out of respect. We are quite some distance away, and in absolutely no way, shape, or fashion am I endangering at this juncture. But yes, sir, I want a mask on a regular basis out of respect many times to the folks that I may be speaking to that's wearing a mask. When I'm out about in Nashville, I abide by the ordinances of Nashville. I have striven to do that in every single time. I'm human. I can't tell you that I had accidentally forgotten my mask, but I do try to obey those ordinances when I am in Nashville. Render unto Caesar what Caesar's.
Very good. And Representative Hodges, if you have any further questions, I know you got that last question was not on this piece of legislation, so I'm going to go ahead and just ask you if you have any further questions. I'll be more than happy to put you back on the list. Okay. The next member I have on the list is Representative Staples.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is the first time I've had an opportunity to call you Mr. Chairman, except for when I was getting a bill killed.
Sounds good. Sounds good to me.
It's good. It is so good serving with you right now. Leader Lambert, I need you to answer. I got 3 questions. This is my last time where you and I get to debate, so I just, nothing against you other 2 guys. It's just I'm not going to see Leader for a long period of time. 3 specific questions. The first one is, if anybody, so with the movement, there's a lot of out-of-state provocateurs coming in that are being paid. So what is the process? That's the first question. What is the process for those that are coming in to be disruptors because they're out of state? Is there something in place? Maybe it's not in this amendment. I don't.
Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
So again, just as the last question, there is no distinction made whatsoever amongst folks that are out of state, from out of country, from anywhere else. I mean, the law is applied to everyone equally.
So,
Representative, go ahead.
so if someone come down from Indiana, they're arrested, but there's a later charge, we have the ability to get them back from Indiana to come to court and face any charges for.
Leader Lamberth.
Yes, sir, we do. I will say that if charged with a misdemeanor is much more difficult. I mean, law enforcement regularly transports folks on felonies back to state if they choose not to show up for their court date. But I will say on misdemeanors, it is from time to time very difficult to undergo the expense of transporting someone back. There are instances where they will do so, but it usually has to be something that's pretty egregious or someone who has failed to show up in court multiple times. And so most of what we were talking about here are misdemeanors. If someone failed to appear, they would be charged with a separate offense of failure to appear, which is also a misdemeanor due to this body's hard work over the years. It's no longer a felony. So to your question, I mean, it's possible they would transport someone back, but with misdemeanor charges, it is also possible that they could simply choose not to return, and that warrant would be out there for the rest of their lives. If they ever got it back into Tennessee or if they were arrested somewhere else, they might transport them, they might not, but the warrant would still be out there.
Representative Staples.
Thank you. Leader, page 7, section 18, is based around the information involving camping. Section 3, page 7, I'm sorry, section 18, number 3 there, it reads that a person is not guilty basically if, and summarizing on page 8, if they've gotten some sort of permission to be on their property. Now, is that going to be based on whatever that particular area has for filling out the process, that whole kind of thing, and being
Leader Lamberth, you're recognized, sir.
If anybody follows my social media, which I doubt many of you do, you have much more interesting things to do with your time, but we like to camp in our family. That's something we enjoy doing. Many times it's at a state park. It's on state property, something that we all provide, and we pay a fee for that, but that fee gives us permission to be in a particular campsite. Thus, we have permission in these type of potential penalties, if you have permission, not apply to those that are camping in our state parks. If someone's having a festival on state property, happens many times on the Legislative Plaza where there's a permitted event where someone has permission to be there overnight to erect camping, equipment, awning,